I actually think that the movie really surprised me.
Felt like we were actually in Barbie land.
Like, I'm flattered that people really like my feet.
Like, they're not wearing normal clothes. They're caricatures of concepts.
But they look so good.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, come on. Why can't we wear stuff like that?
Are they overdoing it, or is like, for real, are they gonna get it, or is this gonna feel like, oh, it's too feminist?
We're going to be talking about spoilers in this episode. Welcome to Backseat Directing.
Where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew.
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're reviewing the movie Barbie.
3, 2, 1, action.
I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world.
We nailed that one.
Yeah.
That was great.
Welcome to the show, Andrew. Today, we have a guest with us.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. Kaylee.
Hi.
Yeah, Kaylee, we wanted to start out. This is your first time being a guest on the show, so this is any listener's first chance to meet you. So we wanted to first just let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself and your interests.
Yeah, so as you guys said, my name's Kaylee. I am a screenwriter and kind of aspiring to write movies and film. Kind of do a little bit of everything in, yeah.
That is so cool. You're awesome for having that goal. I wish I could be a screenwriter.
How
Maybe
many
someday.
movies have you been a part of?
5.
5? Jeez.
Dang.
I didn't realize there was that many. I knew of 2.
I've written 4, I've acted in 4, and I'm going to be directing one this fall.
Man, you're so
That's so
impressive.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's so cool. And
I so badly want to make a movie.
this week we're talking about Greta Gerwig's Barbie. So it's really awesome and fitting for you to be on here because Greta, I feel like, is becoming such an icon in this field. And I just saw a news report that she's on track to have the biggest opening weekend for a female director in history.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I spent this last week watching all of her movies. I watched Lady Bird and I watched Little Women. And I'm just so impressed with her as a filmmaker. And the movies are so good. And I can't wait to talk about what we all think about Barbie now that we've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Kaylee, what are some of your favorite movies and stuff?
So I really like anything that's action or anything that really makes you think. So Interstellar and Avatar are probably up there for me. I'm also very much into like visuals and like how films are made. So I really like the behind the scenes. So anything like that, if there's a lot that goes into it, kind of really draws me into a movie. Like Lord of the Rings are iconic for how they were made. More so than, how, they came across to audiences.
Yeah, Aaron was just in the car on the drive to the movies downplaying Interstellar, saying it did not make his top 5 Nolan films.
But they're all Nolan films. They're
That's
all
fair.
really good. Like,
I feel like
Andrew always
There's a lot-
puts everything I say with a negative twist on it.
There's a lot to compare there when we're talking Nolan
It's not
films,
like the
so-
movies I picked above it are bad.
no, I think
Come on, Andrew.
I think it's crazy to put Insomnia over Interstellar, but that's just me.
All right, this is a different podcast.
But much like Chris Nolan, who tends to write his movies, another movie, Oppenheimer, that we saw today, Greta Gerwig also tends to write her own movies as well. So that's something I know Aaron always talks about loving, is when you're like the facilitator of this, basically drafting something from your imagination to the screen all the way through when you write and direct a movie is such a cool phenomenon. And I think that both of these two warring at the box office is just so much fun. And it's really like their brainchilds each, because in both cases of Oppenheimer and Barbie, they wrote and directed the entire movie individually, of course.
I think it says something to the success of Greta's, at least like her latest films, but even all of her other films, that she has written and directed them, like pairing those parts, those roles in most of those films.
Yeah, it's from the beginning. I mean, she adapted Little Women, from a book to be written for the screen, just like Oppenheimer, or just like Nolan adapted the book for Oppenheimer to the movie. So it's such a cool talent to have, to be able to wear all those hats. And I feel like it sounds incredibly stressful.
Yeah. As stressful as it sounds, I feel like it's the best way to make a movie, to have the person
There's no
who
disconnect.
thought of it all,
Yeah.
the one telling or leading the direction of what they came up with.
Yeah.
I feel like it's got to be the best way to do
Exactly.
it.
While we're still early in this episode, and this seems like the perfect segue into this conversation, we did want to not gloss over and make sure we mention the WGA writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike that's going on right now.
Yeah.
Making sure that we mention that we stand in solidarity with everything we're doing, totally support their message.
Yeah.
We've gone over just to make sure that we're not doing anything inappropriate in this time. And from everything we can tell, it seems like the thing that the strike members are asking for is to not do work that promotes studios, not to do work for studios, not to take the work of striking actors or writers, and none of which we're doing. We're not doing paid promotion for this movie. We're not even big enough to refuse paid promotion at this point in time. But
We don't get money at all from this.
but I mean, Kaylee's a writer. We would love to make a movie or a short film someday. So we definitely appreciate these communities. And I wanted to take a moment to, because one of the big things they said too is to, a way to help us to acknowledge it. So just to talk about it at all. So bringing it up is the first kind of step. And I wanted to make sure that we stated that we stand in solidarity with everything they represent.
Yes.
I think that people should be paid what they owed in any profession. They should be paid a living wage, and people should be able to survive on work, especially when that work is making millions upon billions of dollars for an industry or individuals at a higher level.
Yeah, pay your writers, pay your actors. Like,
Yeah.
they're not even asking for that much. Like, calm
Yeah.
down.
It's a wild assertion that that statement that I just said would be like radical in any way. Like, people should be able to deserve to eat when they're earning millions and billions of dollars.
Like the amount of work writers and actors do for, the pay that they're not getting compared to the money that the movies are making, it's insane. Like,
Record profits and like comparative percentage wise record lows for pay. It's
Yeah, and I feel like it's only gotten worse recently too because of the like high demand of these streaming platforms.
Yes.
Like overworking, especially the writers.
Yeah.
And definitely underpaying them. And then not even to mention all of the stuff with AI.
and blue collar actors, I mean, they can't make a living. That's so with the lack of payment residuals. I saw one individual, he plays the devil, I believe, on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, saying that they used his likeness, a picture of him in a poster that went on like a major highway, and you didn't get paid a cent for that. They just own the rights to your likeness in a way.
Yeah, that
Unfair
should
deals.
not be that way at all. Definitely not. That's got to change.
But in hoping that changes, we're going to move forward, continue to talk about Barbie, because a lot of people put their heart and soul and a lot of effort into this movie, writers and actors included. And I'm sure that they do want people to watch it and to appreciate it, all the hard work that they put into it, despite everything that's going on. I'm not going to, I don't want to speak for them, but I've heard people say that they're not yet calling for like a boycott of
Right.
going to the movies, basically. So
Yeah. With that said, Andrew, Kaylee, what did you think of Barbie?
you want to go first?
Sure. I thought Barbie was a really fun movie. I came in with relatively low expectations, mostly because I didn't know what to expect. The trailers really didn't give like much. I didn't watch them very much. I saw them and then that was it. But after watching the movie, I was like, I was very surprised how like emotional it felt at times, and then it was very much like, what you would expect a Barbie movie to be. It was that, but it was done very, very well, and in a way that was really enjoyable throughout the whole thing. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually think that the movie really surprised me because I agree. I didn't have much of an idea what was going to happen from the trailer. I kind of took a lot out of that line that Will Ferrell said, we want you, Barbie. We're not really interested in Ken. And I thought the plot was going to be more focused on that. But it was even more meta than I expected and crossing over from the real world in Barbie land, and it really surprised me in a lot of ways, but I think all in good ways because I absolutely love the movie.
Yeah, kind of similar to Kaylee when she was talking about how she didn't really know what to expect from this movie. That's kind of where I sat. I don't think I saw the full trailer. I definitely saw all of their marketing stuff. Like it was all over social media. Like they marketed this movie, I think, really well. Like it's been everywhere.
I mean, who's had better marketing this year? I mean, Mission Impossible is close with
Yeah.
all the stunt work they showed, but I feel like Barbie has had the best.
Barbie's
Yeah.
the best. By
I,
far.
I would say so as well.
All you have to do is stick pink on a poster. Just pink.
Everyone's
Barbie.
everyone's showing up wearing pink. The fact that everybody knows that, like everybody is on brand with, and it's crazy because this movie's poking fun at itself and making jokes about like consumerism and capitalism, and at the same time feeding it. So it's like it's ultra meta, and this movie is very ironic.
Yeah, but I found myself laughing throughout the whole movie. I felt like I was encapsulated in this environment, like it felt like we were actually in Barbie land. The set design looked amazing, which we did little predictions of like how we thought the ratings would be for each of our categories. And I said a 5 out of 5 for set design, and I would agree with that after actually watching the full movie. I know we're kind of jumping ahead there, but yeah, I enjoyed the movie as well.
All right, well, let's go on to our next stage because I just wanted to volley off you, but I'm gonna save some of this conversation for when we do our personal ratings.
Yeah, sounds good. So, a movie summary. This movie kind of follows the theme of some other movies that you might recognize that we'll kind of touch on where we see the parallels. But basically, Barbie's living in this, is it Barbie Land? Is that what they
Barbie
called
Land.
it? Barbie Land. And somehow the connection between Barbie Land and the real world got broken or messed up in some way to where she started feeling emotions and her feet went flat instead of being arched up like she's in heels, and she felt like something was wrong. And then she ends up taking this journey to the real world to find the person that she is connected with. And then what would you say, like, what are they trying to overcome from there?
Well, she's trying, like you said, she's trying to repair basically what they call a tear in the time-space continuum. So she's trying to fix Barbie Land, and then I don't think there's ever really a focus on fixing the real world, but she's overcoming the realization of
It's like a story of like kind of finding yourself in a way.
finding yourself and accepting some of the imperfections of yourself,
Right.
others, the world,
Like flat feet and cellulite.
and the patriarchy. the three terrible things. The trinity of
In that order. Okay, this movie obviously came out in 2023. It's rated PG-13. It's an hour and 54 minutes long, which I feel like it went by pretty quick. I mean, it's not the longest movie ever, but I feel like we were there for 30 minutes. It was a well-paced movie.
We also just came out of seeing a 3-hour movie before that, so
Yeah.
it was a hard task to not seem long.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I didn't feel like I was been sitting in the theater for 5 hours, which we had been at that point. IMDb currently has it at a 7.7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes for the critics have it at a 90% with 271 reviews. And then the audience score has it at an 89% with 1,000 plus scores. So both have it pretty high.
I think the IMDb rating is too low, in my opinion.
Too low?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
7.7.
Let's dive into our ratings then. So we break our ratings up into 6 categories, starting with story. This category is out of 10. Who wants to go first? Should we let's throw it on to Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
I want to throw it on Andrew. Let's give Kaylee time to kind of see how we go with the ratings here.
Andrew's like, no. We're just going to throw Kaylee into the fire.
Yeah. No.
Trying to give the guest a chance, but I'm more than happy to say that I rated this movie story as a 9 out of 10. Very high. And my reasoning for rating it a 9 out of 10 is because I think that it was totally unexpected, and it also had a real world message. I love when movies apply to the real world, and I think that they approached the meta and the irony in a really appropriate way that despite how, like, for lack of a better word, extra it did not feel like superfluous or over the top or ostentatious. Like, it was perfect. It was perfectly over the top. It really worked for me, and a lot of times that stuff doesn't. And we'll go home and my fiance is telling me, it's camp, you don't understand that, you just didn't understand it. But I feel like I was on board for this ride in an unexpected way with how much it was.
Okay, that sounds fair. I did not have it rated as high as you for the story. I had it at a 6.5 out of 10. And I think it's more so just kind of the style of movie is just not my typical cup of tea. It's a little bit cheesy. But like you said, Andrew, I think they did that really well. Like they were over the top, but it was like the right amount, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it's not my typical type of movie or story, if that makes sense.
I liked how goofy it was.
Yeah. I was definitely laughing at a bunch of parts throughout, like Kaylee and I were bumping each other on the arms. Like, did you see that? That was crazy.
Man, I was like rocking back and forth in my seat, laughing at some points. I was dying, covering my face, like stifling my laughter.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was a little cringy at times, but like it kind of made it funny because of it.
No, I thought that anything that was cringy was so obviously on purpose that it worked. And that, personally, that is not always how I feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like cringy on purpose is just cringy, but whatever reason, like, it just felt like Barbie Land was Barbie Land, and that made everything okay.
See, I guess
They captured that so well.
I'll let you go.
I think the reason that worked out so well, and one of you mentioned this before, is because the movie's kind of like they're self-aware.
Right.
They wrote it to be self-aware, and they know that they're making, all these jokes. They know that Barbie Land is outlandish, and that even Barbie and Ken in the real world were outlandish, and just the whole thing. Like the execs in the movie acted like Barbie, like Ken's in the real world.
Yeah.
It was just like they knew that, and they took that and just ran with it.
And everything inside of the Mattel Corporation building was almost like Barbie Land as well. It was like a microcosm of the Barbie Land world, but in reality, where these people were, their cubicles make no sense. They completely lock them in. It's like to show you that they're like trapped in this corporate world. And then like the way that they go upstairs and the CEOs are, everybody on the board is all men, and they're talking about how they're like trying to make women feel empowered, like in a conference room full of men. And then the heart-shaped table in that room. I just feel like everything was so like, it was incredibly self-aware, like you said, especially in them coming to the real world and everybody laughing at them and who would dress like that. Like these are like, they're not wearing normal clothes. They're caricatures of concepts.
But they look so good.
Yeah.
All right, come on. Why can't we wear stuff like that?
and the story is like, while we're on I want to hear your score.
Okay. So I had this story. I'm kind of going between a 7 and a 7.5. I really enjoyed it, but coming from the perspective of someone who writes stories, I know they kind of kept it within, the same realm, and the same kind of like theme from the beginning was present throughout the rest of the film. But the transition from going from that initial plot of like Elf, the movie, of her getting out of Barbie Land, trying to find somebody to fix something, then becoming Ken, turning everything into like the patriarchy, felt like a weird shift.
It was a fast shift.
Yeah, it felt like, because it felt like they did everything smooth, and it was a smooth transition, but at the same time, it was like, that's a really like fast and like short setup.
Yeah.
To bring in these two characters from the real world to Barbie Land to stop Ken's whole deal with, what's going on in Barbie Land, and then they're leaving, but then they're not leaving, and it's, I don't know, it was fun. That's why I have it so high, but it was kind of choppy for me.
I think that Ken coming back to the real world with like pieces of the real world, bringing that with him, was a continuation of the problem of the rift in between the worlds. That's how I saw it. Was like the rift opened up, started with Barbie feeling like these ominous feelings that aren't supposed to exist in perfect Barbie Land, and then he brought with him more of the real world's trouble, the patriarchy, and all these, showing like alcoholism, consumerism, capitalism, like the, basically like the Americanization of Barbie Land. I felt like it was like a continualization, continualization is what I'm saying.
It just kept going.
I felt like it was a continuation of the theme that they started with.
That was an Aaronism.
I see your perspective too, but you said it was an Aaronism. Yeah, I said that.
I think you're completely right. Where I'm coming from is it just went really fast.
Yeah,
and it was a really weird turnaround going from that beginning, like, because it was present from the beginning to the end what you started with, but the way that it turned around, and you kind of like I had the just thought in my head, partially because I watched the Craven trailer yesterday, was that villains aren't born, they're made. So we kind of see how Ken becomes a villain. He's made into a villain, but it just, for me, it happened really fast. I 100% agree with you, though. I think the plot was smooth and it was present and the same the whole time. But
It's just how it was executed.
I really like the themes of like feminism and empowerment. And I feel like the themes are things that like really had me like deeply thinking, because it's the concept of the perspective from Barbie Land of being a world where the Kens or the men feel similarly to how women feel in their everyday life. And I feel like I feel like movies are obviously very powerful, but I feel like when Barbie came into the real world and Ken starting to feel the empowerment of recognizing that the world is driven and led by men in the real world and feeling like bolstered by that, it was like the first time in a way that I started to kind of, they put it into like a perspective that I could
You
understand
started
more.
to feel your power.
I just went super Saiyan.
Conquer the world.
There was a girl sitting next to me. I pushed her out of her seat and put my feet up on her seat. No, but I feel like that's the first time for me, because I try to like think of myself as like a forward thinking person or like open to a lot of concepts. I really like believe in equality and like to think that I'm something I value really strongly. But I feel like they just, you know, when like a teacher is trying to convey something to you and they just put it in just that right, perfect way where you can go, oh, now I understand that. And I feel like they did a really good job of putting men in the shoes of women in the world they live in every day. Whereas a lot of average people, and I'm not even saying that like I thought this way about it, because this is kind of a, you know, far end of the spectrum answer. But a lot of people could be like, why do you feel not empowered? Like there's been, you know, females doing this and females doing that. Like, why do you?
There's one female doctor. There's one of them over here. There's one of them over there. But see, women can do it.
But they have a line in this movie where it's like Kens can strive to one day feel the autonomy and the freedom that women have in the real world, and it's like you laugh at it because you get like why it's funny is because women aren't truly equal yet.
Yeah.
Like it's a journey that we're on as a society.
Yeah.
So I thought this movie, like that it could flip that kind of, and I feel like I'm making it sound like this movie made me think about women as equals for the first time. But I'm talking about flipping the light.
He's been enlightened. For the first time ever.
What I'm talking about is this movie flipping the light in my head of like giving me a better perspective on how an entire different gender feels.
It shows you how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, it's like a crazy thing that it's never. I feel like it's just never been put to me in those words before. You know, that the movie conveyed an interesting feeling. Lit spark. It's cool.
It was weird seeing it on screen and seeing like everything that like I think and feel internally put up, and it's like you see that like it's an actual plot in this movie that they're having to deal with, like because like, okay, example, I'm a female trying to go into a film industry, like that's insane. The film industry it's not a nice place for women to go. And so, like, it was a little, like, uncomfortable, but it was also like, man, I wonder what everyone around me is thinking watching this. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, are they overdoing it? Or is this, like, for real? Are they going to get it? Or is this going to feel like, oh, it's too feminist?
I had the exact same thought. And I was watching it like, there are going to be people so quickly, so loud, and so immediately that are going to say, oh, this movie is hyper feminist and it's anti-men and this. And I really feel like when you have like a disenfranchised community that you need to like let them have their voice. And this movie, I don't think is at the expense of men. It's like, it's having a good time with the themes it's displaying, but it's also displaying very real, powerful and appropriate themes. And like, I'm just, it's so sucky to think that 7.7 score that I said was too low is potentially a result of people's gut reaction to that feeling.
Yeah,
to a really good movie.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Okay, I'll go. I
Men
heard
first.
I offered, okay. I heard a review or a first reaction to Barbie, like secondhand. So someone watched a video, told me about it. And they were saying that it was like too much, that it like went too far, you know. But kind of like what you were saying. Like, I don't think it was. I think they made it seem ridiculous, but the fact that it's real is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, like the fact that women had to fight to work, to fight to vote, you know, like that 95% of directors are male, you know, like that stuff is real and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a quote.
You know, and just because this movie is hyper funny or cheesy or whatever, like that's how it really is. Like, you know, and like you said, I don't think they drew guys and at the expense of guys, you know, like I can see people maybe hating how maybe feminine some of the guys were, you know, like singing and dancing and all that stuff. But like,
You mean you can expect people to feel that way, not that you agree with them.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. Thank you. But like Barbie and all of the Barbies, they were all over the top as well. You
Yeah.
know, like it wasn't just like the women were in reality and the men were the crazy ones, you know, like they were both the same, but dealing with the reversed problems.
And people, and just their walk down the street when dealing with like the catcalling, the construction workers, people are going to say that's unrealistic, but you can watch videos on YouTube of, there's a video, I think it's titled,
Just look at her reaction. Like,
there's a video, I think it's titled like woman walking down the street in New York.
I know exactly what
And
video
it's
you're
literally just like 15 straight minutes of catcalling, inappropriate comments. Like she
Yeah.
can't even walk down the street. Like she lives there. And that's going to be called like cartoonish and over the top. And it's not like
Yeah.
the themes aren't either. There's what I was thinking about when you talked about being a woman in the industry was, there's an interview with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling where Margot says that, she felt like there had to be a lot of faith in the person playing Ken because they had to star in this movie but be directed by a woman. And she thinks that a lot of men in Hollywood might. I don't think she necessarily said a lot. I think she changed it to some. Like some men might have a problem with being directed by a woman, and it's like why? You've got this brilliant director who I mean, Lady Bird and Little Women are stunning movies. They're brilliantly directed, and people would kill to work with Chris Nolan or Martin Scorsese. People should feel the same way about an accomplished female director.
yeah. Even on like our scale here, like Kaylee's a much better writer than me, and we've worked on projects together and stuff. So like, I would be stupid not to listen to her suggestions when we're doing a production or something. You know, like just because she's a girl, like her opinions are wrong. Like that's crazy.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for all your help.
I think it's also something to be said about like if guys were, if people are to say that like this movie, says something bad about guys, the end of the film is about guys finding their name too. It's about like empowering the guys of Barbie Land, even though it says that line about one day the Kens of Barbie Land will find the same power that women have in the real world. But like, before we hit that line, there was like the guys, finding who we really are. And then that kind of like empowerment outside of a patriarchal system.
Yeah, learning that he's more than a girlfriend or more like you're more than your connections, you're more than your property or what you own, you're more than your house, your car, your job. He's more than beach.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's true. And you're more than your girlfriend, wife, or it is a lot about self-discovery, like you said earlier. So I think the plot is really special. We've been going, I want to talk even more, but we've thoroughly covered plot for now. We can move on to acting.
So this silly little movie, quote unquote, is inspiring this like in-depth conversation, and I think that's like what this is all about, so that's really cool. But we're going to move on to our acting category. So this is the performance that we saw on camera. This is out of 10 points as well. Ladies first, Kaylee.
So initially I had it at a 9, but I gave it an extra 0.5.
Oh, true.
9.5.
Yeah,
All right.
I think everyone did a really good job, and you made a good point about like guys being able to, be directed by a female director. And I think like Ryan Gosling's ability to play Ken and to, make him a villain, but at the same time a villain that's like relatable and who can come back from that, and like Margot Robbie as Barbie was completely, like, absolutely perfect. There was like, I don't think there was anything wrong with her I never think there's anything wrong with her performances. I love her as an actress, but she just hit this out of the ballpark. And I think kind of everyone that they had, even the funny little side, roles of like John Cena and Dua Lipa popping up as Little Mermaids. I thought like they just did a great job, and it was fun. And when there was like acting to be had, whether it was over the top or whether it was like a really serious moment, I think that everyone kind of played their role really well, regardless of like who the character was.
And no, I totally agree. I ended up giving it a little bit of a lower score than you, but still an incredibly high score of an 8 out of 10. And the reason being that I feel like you said, Margot really put this movie on her back. Her acting was phenomenal, and I would put her casting as Barbie up there in the upper echelon of all timers. Like the pitch perfect casting of Margot as Robbie is up there with, RDJ as Iron Man, and like all these other performances where you couldn't imagine anyone else, and it's I think that it's going to go down as one for the books, I feel like. But then everyone else I feel like had purposefully a lot of overacting to do. Overacting is something that Will Ferrell excels at, and so he was freaking hilarious. Another one that was like such a good fit for his role. I think Simu Liu was amazing in this movie. And then everybody else, Issa Rae, a bunch of the Barbies and Kens. I think that they did a really, really good job. But overacting, even though on purpose, still got to call it like it is. It's overacting. It's not as challenging. So I think that Ryan Gosling was really good.
Challenging in a different way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could say that. You could use that to switch around anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's still
McDonald's is delicious in a different way.
Overacting is still acting, especially if the type of movie calls for it.
Yeah.
Because then that's just acting.
And they really made it was overacting, but at the same time, they did it in such a way that it wasn't overacting like in the movie. It fit exactly what they needed
like
in the
everyone is doing the same kind of overacting to where it wasn't like, oh, that one person, they're going too much. You know what I mean?
And
it definitely took 2 points off for me regardless.
And that's totally fair.
yeah.
I have it at an 8 out of 10 as well. I think I was convinced of everyone's character 100%.
Especially Margot.
Yeah, I mean, I said in our predictions that like I can't see anyone else as that classic Barbie or a stereotypical Barbie than her. Like she seems to, or she fits that role like perfectly. Like in our predictions, it was like, this is her, this is Barbie,
and she sold every moment, every goofy moment, every like the spawning of emotions for the first time in a lifetime, like the sadness, anguish. I feel like she sold all of it so well.
The opening sequence where she's like getting up out of bed, she's like drinking nothing out of a cup. When she's sliding down the slide, like her legs are perfectly straight. She's sitting up super tall.
Physical acting is incredible.
She was very stiff with her movements. Like when she sat down on the ground and she was all sad and then she fell over.
When she rolled, when she's all depressed.
You could hear like the plasticky sound.
Oh, they added.
No, yeah, I did, yeah. But and then I was sorry. No. Go ahead. Okay. What's his name? Simu Liu. He was probably my favorite outside of like the main two cast. Like he was my favorite like supporting actor for sure.
Yeah.
Mine would be definitely Will Ferrell.
I thought he like knocked Ken out of the park. I thought he did Ken so well. I was excited every single time he was on screen. I was like, this guy is fantastic.
I think the interactions between him and Ryan Gosling's Ken worked really well.
Yes. Yeah. I think something that stood out to me, kind of just going back to Margot just a little bit, kind of when you guys were talking about her showing her emotions for the first time, something that really stuck out to me was when they were dancing right after she said, "Do you guys ever think about death?" And then she was like, "I'm dying to start dancing again." And they started dancing and they were in that circle. You could see that Barbie was having, like, she was trying to get back into that happiness, but you could see on Margot's
the
face.
internal conflict,
like, just there was the whole, like, she couldn't get all the way back into that. And you felt that from Barbie.
I was thinking about the same thing during those dance sequences, especially in the beginning, how they were still, like, acting through the dance. Like, that's really hard.
I think that was, that was displayed really well when she goes to sleep and she says, "I'm not thinking about death as much anymore." And she closes her eyes and then she opens them back up with like kind of this grimace of the mistruth. But speaking of the dancing scene, I think that's a perfect segue into our next category, which is cinematography. And we rate on a scale of 1 to 10. For cinematography, I ended up giving this movie a 9. And I think that I
This
think
is like your highest score ever for a movie.
so
Is this your favorite movie of all time, Dal?
the cinematography, I really like when there's a theme, and the color theme of this movie was pink, and I like when they go all in. And this movie didn't half-ass it. You could tell from any instant in a shot whether you're in Barbie Land or the real world because of the cinematography, the composition of the shots. They really made use of like all these amazing props, filling up the scenes with color, vibrancy in Barbie Land, and then the more muted tones of the real world, the more like mechanical, industrial urbanization of the real world versus Barbie Land, which was very fantastical and dreamlike. And I took away that one point for missing my favorite camera element, which I didn't see any really amazing moments of camera movement other than the upside down shots with them as they're arcing over with the flipped car, which I really, really enjoyed those shots both times that they did it. But other than that, I thought there wasn't as much incredible camera moment. But I did really like the length of shots, especially during the dance sequence. You could tell that the actual actors were always performing these dances themselves. You could tell that they memorized the choreography, and you could tell that they were perfectly in time and in tune with each other. Like when they were doing the claps along to, that's the Dua Lipa song?
Yeah.
When they're doing the clap song to the Dua Lipa song, but like you said, Gosling's also acting, showing his like disdain for the other Ken and his jealousy over Barbie. Like you can read that on his face while incorporated with the dance number because they're holding the shots for a long time and staying on them, these wide shots that show the whole group. Like it takes a lot to do all that in camera to synchronize all that with all these different people. And I'm sure that it was a huge ordeal for them to film that sequence.
Yeah, definitely. I have cinematography at a 7 out of 10. All the things that I liked is exactly what you just said. You know, the dance choreography and how they were able to capture that. They had a lot of wide shots, which really showed us that these actors are actually doing the dance and acting, which we've already said. That's really hard. Like, I can't dance and I can't act. So, like, to do them both at the same time, like, congrats. Like, that was awesome. But kind of like what you said, but docking off one point, like, I didn't see a lot of, like, highly technical shots, you know, with, like, a lot of movement or whatnot. I did really like the shot where she was, like, pretend being picked up off of the dollhouse and placed into her car. Like, I thought that was really smooth. But
was a good shot.
Kind of other than that, there wasn't a ton of like shots that like I stopped and was like, oh, that was a really cool shot. How did they do that kind of thing? But it wasn't bad to where it took me out of the movie at any point. So that's why I landed at a 7 out of 10. Kaylee, where did you rank the cinematography?
I also had it at a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Kind of similar to what you said, nothing really stood out to me. So, like I've mentioned, I've worked on a number of films, and in doing that, you're always hyper aware of the shots and the camera work that you do. And so, generally, when I watch a movie, my brain, I'm thinking about it anyways. And I was watching this movie, and I was, at some point toward the end of the film, I was just struck with, this is like simple camera work.
But it's done really well.
It was done really well. That's not to say that
Yeah.
it wasn't. Like it's Hollywood level simple camera work.
Exactly.
And like, as I said, towards the beginning of the episode, a lot of the films that I love and really look up to, in part, is because of the cinematography and the camera work and just kind of the ingenuity of it. And Barbie, I think its strength wasn't necessarily the cinematography, but it was done well, which is why it's
and I think it's kind of on purpose too, right? Like, this crazy cinematography like didn't get in the way
exactly
of anything.
They wanted to highlight other
they
parts
told
of the
the
film.
story the way that they needed to.
Exactly.
Why are you shaking your head over there?
Because I don't agree with that. Like, I don't think you should ever say like, "Oh, do your cinematography less good so it doesn't get in the way of the story." But I also don't agree
I
with
didn't
you.
say do it less good.
They didn't do it.
You said just
good.
simple. I don't think doing it simple or taking the easy road is the way to go to make it, to focus more on the story. I think you can do both, but I think I'd also disagree with you both. I think the cinematography was really incredible. I think that Rodrigo Prieto and and Greta Gerwig are really masterful when it comes to close-up shots and insert shots, and they use them so phenomenally and so effectively. Even like looking at Lady Bird, like the shots of where she writes the name of her crushes on her wall in this little tiny ink, and then going to the end of the movie where she's now painting over it and moving on from her past. Like they use it effectively, they use it emotionally, and they use it in a way that is like cognitively like very, very affecting and very connected at least to me. Like the close-up shots of her feet as she's stepping out of her shoes, like it's funny because she steps out and her feet are still in the same stance, but it's indicative of like foreshadowing, and it shows that like the material nature of her as a toy, and it connects to the future of the movie. And then the close-up, there's such an amazing, beautiful shot of the close-up of her eye when she sheds a tear in the third act of the movie. Like I feel like a powerful reaction to the close-up shots and the way that the cinematographer and director in this relationship like use them in their movies.
I would agree with you with a number of the close-ups, like the feet. You know, that's something that has stood out to literally everyone who's watched it. Margot Robbie said like, thank you guys for like, I'm flattered that people really like my feet, and you know why that is? Because of that shot and the flat feet thing. And as well, like a shot that really stood out to me, the eye one as well. But when her and Ruth at the end were holding hands, but particularly when Ruth backed away, I had the conscious thought of, wow, that's a beautiful shot.
Yeah, well,
so there are really good shots that are in there, but overall, to me, it was simple, and that's not saying that they didn't try on the cinematography, because like in the one scene where the mom was talking and kind of giving her speech to the small group of Barbies, the number of cuts in there, like I was very conscious of how many different shots they had, how many different angles. Like I'm hyper aware of that kind of stuff when I'm watching a film.
Yeah.
And so like they had it and they really thought about it. And I agree with you that they really put a lot of thought into it. But I don't think they were trying to highlight the cinematography in a way that like Nolan or Spielberg or Scorsese, that might not be the right name, try to do.
I think there's so many different elements to cinematography beyond like advanced camera tricks, and you know, you can take like push-ins and dolly zooms and all this stuff but I think that this movie really excelled in some of the other maybe not as noteworthy or obvious elements of cinematography. And like when Greta Gerwig makes a movie, I feel like it's like a filmmaker's movie. Like it's like a movie for movie makers, like for filmmakers. So I was surprised that you put it at like a 7 out of 10.
I feel like Barbie was less of a filmmaker's movie and more of like an intellectual's movie, and more of like it's kind of a thinking movie, and the visuals were more of the set design and the character design.
I was just gonna bring that up.
But it's the cinematography's job to show that stuff, you know, to highlight it, to accentuate it too.
Yeah. I think it there's the fine line between the cinematography showcasing it and the work they put in to create
like
it.
There's obviously a lot that goes into cinematography, especially for our broad rating purposes, right? We have the camera movement, the composition, the color design, and grade, and then we also have editing. So like there's a lot to consider there, but there was nothing there that like really stood out or like, to me, overly enhanced the experience of watching the movie.
That's fair. Well, also to touch on, before I forget, the scene you mentioned with Ruth when they're touching hands, there's 2 instances of them touching hands in the movie, and the shots are they're representative of the Sistine Chapel, of the creator and the created, and that's like the symbolism behind those shots, which I thought was like a really cool thought piece for them to add in. And I feel like there's multiple layers of this where they're in this movie where the shots line up with the real world. Like when you have the weird Barbie holding each shoe, symbolic of the red and blue pill in the Matrix, like this like when I say like it's a filmmaker's movie, it's like there's so many references to media, to film, literature. This movie being
That's
meta
the
is also
story.
hyper aware of
Yeah.
the world.
That's the story.
That's the story. I think
And presenting two options is not cinematography. That's the story.
Yeah, I think that also goes into like this movie is reminiscent of Elf. It's reminiscent of Free Guy. It kind of pulls in ideas that you see there. I mean, like Elf leaving the North Pole was this whole journey, right? And Barbie leaving Barbie Land was this whole journey that was like, you know, it was kind of like just plucking that callback and putting it in the movie. And I thought it was really funny that Will Ferrell was in it because of that correlation.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you guys can untangle story from cinematography so easily, because that the nature of the distance they took with the shot, the angle they took with the shot, the fact that she's filling up the screen, holding one shoe in one hand and a completely different shoe in the other. It's all what I'm finishing a sentence. It's all what makes you reminisce on The Matrix, because it's the same angle and shot and length that they took when they filmed that scene with Lawrence Fishburne's character in The Matrix.
I would just like to say the way I do it is just because I've written a lot of films and I've also been the DP for a number of projects. Like I know you do camera work. Do you do camera work?
Not so
No.
much. Not as
so
much.
it's I think for me it's
If he's
because-
working with me on something, then yes.
I think for me it's just because I've had so much experience doing that like that's what I've been trained in, like that's what I've learned to do. That's the reason that I can do it, and I can look at it and be like, I just point things out, and that's how.
They did their job really well, but they didn't do anything that was hyperly like inventive. You know, like which I feel like me and Kaylee giving it a 7 out of 10 is not dissing the cinematography like you're acting like we are. But it's not on the same level as, for me at least, like the Batman.
I'm just not
or Dune
I'm not so
Blade Runner or, you know, like for
Yeah.
me those
well, Blade Runner's a 10. But I'm not
I'd
so
say it's really high up there. Yeah. Like, and that's kind of like what I'm imagining when I give a 10 or 9 for cinematography, you know, is like,
I'm not so much disagreeing with your score, though, as what I want to say before you continue to talk about the score. I'm disagreeing with your reasoning. But we can move on to our next category.
okay, let's move on. Sound design, again, out of 10 points. Kaylee, let's start with you.
So I would just like to preface this with I'm not the best with sound.
Well, so before you go on, I want to tell you what our sound category like actually includes. So
Okay,
this
that's
is
great.
pretty much everything that you would hear. So it's including the score, it's including the soundtrack, and then you also have like all the Foley work, you know, like the sound effects and everything else that kind of goes into the audio version of the viewing experience.
Okay,
You know,
for
like
sure.
in the film industry, a lot of people say that the audio and the sound is half of the viewing experience. You know, so we're taking in consideration all of that. Even the dialogue too at certain points. Like if you can't hear what they're saying, like that could be poor sound design.
Can I give like decimals that aren't a 5 or a 0? Or
Yeah,
should
you-
I?
you
Okay,
do whatever
perfect.
you want.
I'm happy with my score then.
Yeah, this is your world. We're just living in it.
Then the score for sound design for me would be like an 8.7.
Okay.
It's like an almost 9, but it's not an 8. I mentioned earlier, you know, when we were talking about Barbie, you know, as she was changing from Barbie to more human Barbie, when, you know, like she sits down and like falls over, you know, you hear the plasticky sound of it. I think they do a good job of just adding those small details here and there to make it feel like, you know, Barbie world. And then part of the reason I also have it so high is just because the soundtrack and like what they did there is brilliant. All of the songs fit. They go with the story. I mean, Lizzo's song basically tells the story at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And then Dua Lipa's song, that's the most Barbie song that you could have for a Barbie movie, apart from like the original Barbie song.
Yeah.
I was expecting that to show up at some point in the movie.
They put it
Legality.
in the credits, but
Did you say legality? What do you mean?
To have the actual song and like they didn't have the rights to do it, but they were able to have some of the lyrics in there because
Yeah.
it was under the parody law.
yeah.
That's fact.
Pretty sure.
It's just weird because Mattel was a production company on the movie, like when it opened with Mattel.
But they don't own the song.
Yeah.
Who owns the song?
I don't know. Whoever made the song.
We'll have
That's
to
strange. I
Google it
didn't know
eventually.
that they didn't own the song.
Yeah, someone else made the
But
song.
another thing for me, part of the reason that cinematography wasn't so high is because I felt that moments that would be high in cinematography, looking back at it, I thought that the sound design was actually part of the reason some of those shots were really, really good. So like Ken looking around in the patriarchal whatever business world, I think part of the reason that did so well is because they had really good sound design, sound effects going along with each transition and everything that he saw. There was a lot of good. There was like the speaking of that you kind of heard in the background that was kind of, it was that small little like devil on your shoulder type of voiceover that was going in your ear and kind of like staying there, and you could just feel that and see it, in Ken. And so to hear all of that coming together to make those shots, and then there was a lot of that with like Barbie and Barbie World, and even outside of Barbie World, I think they did a great job with the really subtle stuff, and then the stuff that made so much of it just like come together really clean.
Yeah, like you referenced earlier, like when she was falling over, you could hear like the plastic as she was moving. Like their Foley work, their sound effects, like really brought you into the environment of this plastic world.
Yeah.
And then the suction cup as he gets shot with the suction arrow and all the sound effects of the beach fight.
The reason, and then at the beginning of the film, the reason I realized the beach was plastic was not because I saw the sand. It was because I heard the plastic under her feet when she stepped on the sand. I was like, oh,
Or when
that's
he's
different.
That's still plastic.
Yeah.
Or when he bounced off the wave.
Yeah, that was so funny. Yeah. So like all of those small details, they just kind of filter in, and it gives you so much more information, and it brings you so much further into the film. So I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah. Andrew, would you have this at 10 out of 10?
I gave it a 10 out of 10. Fuck you both.
Andrew gets really defensive when you don't like something as much as he does.
Facts.
But I still really like it. I'm just not good at sound design,
I
so
know.
I don't know what constitutes as a 9 or 10.
I know, but you don't like it as much as him, so you're wrong.
That makes us
You're
enemies.
wrong. He didn't learn anything from this movie.
I'm going to be your DM for that one, for the D&D session.
shit.
So I mean, you better watch it.
I mean, I agree to disagree is what I meant to say. But I give it a 10 out of 10 because
Everyone, including women, are valued to their own opinions, entitled to their own opinions.
honestly, this movie begs the question, should men be entitled to their own opinions? I stole that joke. But the sound design is so phenomenal. I feel like sound design, and I've said this a ton of times on the show, is one of those major things that goes through the categories of it's bad so you notice it, it's good so you don't notice it, and it's so good that you notice it again.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie was so good I noticed it again in a bunch of moments. I mean, the cars sounded incredible when they were having a chase scene, which I did not expect a chase scene in this movie. The sounds of all the different like weapons in the beach fight was amazing. The music was really special to me. The music I want to touch on why you're wincing at the beach fight, but the music was really like I left the theater like singing these songs and looked them up on Spotify and played them. Like the Lizzo and Dua Lipa songs are phenomenal, and I like how they maintained a theme throughout the whole rest of the movie. Like the Dua Lipa song returning when they get to Mattel, and like the songs didn't just disappear when they were gone. They kept a constant thread, and that double clap theme from the Dua Lipa song just kept coming back. It returned throughout the movie. I love a through line.
I would just like to defend that the reason I gave a wince was because you convinced me to make my score a 9 instead of an 8.7.
Yeah. Now we're on the same team again.
So you moved up your score.
I moved up my score.
You guys are almost convincing me to lower my scores, and I was like, no, don't do it, Andrew.
Cinematography would be the only one.
Yeah.
But like sound design, I feel like you're right on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when we get into the categories where it actually is like making the story come to life, it's really easy to, for me anyways, to be convinced a little bit more this way or a little bit more that way based off of like our overall view of the movie and how passionate someone else is towards something.
Yeah.
Like for the sound design, like It was incredible, but my first gut reaction was a 7.5 out of 10.
This movie also has an original song, by the way, if that helps your score come up at all. The Just Ken song, Ryan Gosling's he's also, he's not just singing once, but they're also all singing another song at the campfire. And that song shows up in the movie like 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's another theme.
I will say the thing that really stuck out, what you said, was you mentioned when you noticed the sound because it's so good. I think that stood out, but I want to know your reasoning and if your number went up.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my score at a 7.5, and I think the 7.5 is mainly encapsulating the Foley work that we hear. I think that was fantastic, and I know you guys really like the original songs and stuff. For me, I'm not a song guy, so like that stuff just doesn't like stick with me. Like I'm not a musical guy. Like lyrics like that, they just don't stick with me as long as like visuals and stuff.
Did you like feel the peppy nature of like the song? Like I do not dance, and I'm like can't help move listening to the songs in the movie.
Yeah, but I'm not up like dancing in the aisles or anything for it. Like it was good.
Do you do that for some movies?
For some, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it hasn't happened yet.
For some, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Wait to see the Lorax in theaters. I guess.
Never say never. High School Musical got me going.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I'm staying at a 7.5.
Respect.
Yeah.
But let's go on to our next category, which these next 2 categories, we rate both of them out of 5. The next one is set and character design. And I'll go first since I started. My set and character design is obvious for this movie. It's a 5 out of 5. The second perfect score I've given. And it's just obvious. I'll let you guys say why, because I've talked a lot this episode.
Yeah, so I already hinted earlier that I gave it a 5 out of 5 before watching and after watching.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was flawless. It definitely made you feel like you're in this world. Like if they were going to make a Barbie movie, this is the only way that it could have looked. Like they did everything perfect to like the set design, or sorry, the character design of like their outfits, how they accessorized and all of their houses and how everything looked like it was plastic, and then
the food in the fridge, attention to detail.
Right. Yeah. It felt like it was just a giant like dollhouse. And then also the box that she had to get in with the like giant twist ties or whatever, like it was perfect.
I love the giant twist ties, and I liked how the building didn't have walls.
All right, so Andrew and I gave it a 5 out of 5. Kaylee?
5 out of 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Barbie. I was eating it up in that opening scene when Barbie was waking up. I was like, oh my gosh, even the background looks plastic. All of it looks like so Barbie.
Yeah.
And then the milk. Like I was like, is the milk plastic? And then it was. And then she poured it and there was nothing. And it was like, this is literally what it's like playing your Barbie. And then it was like, they were describing all of this stuff. Like the reason that she floats down is because Barbie doesn't walk anywhere.
Right.
You just drag her to where you want to be.
Helen Mirren on the narration, killing it. But the backgrounds were so phenomenal. The mountains, the beach, the Mount Rushmore of Barbies, and then when they were traveling between the different locations and they're jet skiing and rollerblading and biking, like the actual prop of the tandem bike that had all the members of the board on it, the background with the windmills and all the like floating cartoony, everything was toys. It was so in-depth, creative, and so much hard work and heart into it. I freaking loved it. I was dying for it.
And then my favorite thing was them calling out like the actual Barbies. Like the discontinued ones, the legit ones, they referenced everything for like the character design, and it was like, and in the end credits, they're showing you what all the actual Barbies were that they based all of these characters on, and it's really funny because I grew up and I had a pregnant Barbie.
Did you?
Yeah.
What was her name? Midge?
Midge?
Oh my god, that's one of the hardest I laughed in the movie when Will Ferrell was like, Midge! I thought we discontinued her.
It was so good.
At some parts in the movie, I couldn't tell if they were like condemning what they were doing or celebrating what they've done. Like
I think
it was like, yeah, it was back and forth quite a bit.
They're acknowledging some of the like hypocrisy of the world,
right?
That's the real world, and the hypocrisy is even in the movie. Like it's like Fight Club. It acknowledges capitalism but supports capitalism. Like there's like a bunch of product placement in Fight Club, and it's purposeful in both movies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really funny when they had the car. You could just tell for most of the shots, they're like product placement for the car.
Yeah.
But it was also like this is also a chase scene.
Yeah,
So,
the same, exactly. Yeah, like what was it, like a Chevy or something?
Yeah.
And then the Suburbans was what they were
like-
chasing them in.
when they were going down the highway, it looked like
Like a car commercial.
Like a
Yeah,
car commercial.
for
The
I was
car
like,
looked way too nice.
It was the only car that was like colored
yes,
on the road. Like,
exactly.
yeah,
It was pristine, like you just said, way too
always
nice.
in the middle of the screen. Yeah. The lower angles. Yeah.
Power
For
Yeah,
sure.
but this movie's set design was crazy, and I just really like how they would highlight it too. Every outfit change was a highlight, was a focus of that shot. Was like, look at us now, we have a new outfit. We're in.
There were
we're
so
dressed up
many,
as
too.
Cowboys. When
So
they
many.
threw the outfits out and they would unwrinkle and like become like a toy
That was
ad.
awesome.
Like the movie's a giant ad for Barbie. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
It really is.
clever. It's really clever. I feel like that line where Will Ferrell's like, that's a terrible idea, and then the guy's like, it's gonna make money, and he's like, let's do it.
I love it.
That's like exactly the pitch for the Barbie movie. That's the same conversation they had.
That's a terrible idea. But people will buy tickets. All right, let's do it.
They need to sell everything from this movie. Like, I was so infatuated with the Barbie phone case, with the I am Kenuff jacket. Like,
It was so funny. You can tell they stayed on that shot for as long as they did, just to make sure you looked down
Yeah.
and read it.
You looked it up. Are they actually selling that jacket?
I couldn't find it. I couldn't find them
Man,
selling any of that stuff.
What a misstep. Come on now. Andrew would have bought that in a heartbeat. Did you find it?
It's not showing up right away.
All right. Well, set design and character design is unanimous 5 out of 5 for all of us across the board. Our last category is rewatchability. This is out of 5 points. Typically, the way we phrase this one, Kaylee, is if you were to be asked to watch Barbie 5 times, how many times would you say, yeah, let's watch it? So, how many times would you watch it?
Three times.
3?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 out of 5.
I really like it, but it's for me, rewatchability can be really hard to gauge, and it's also I don't know. Barbie felt like it was really fun. It was really funny. I could enjoy it 3 times.
Yeah.
But then like I don't know. It feels like it would get a little old hearing. Like I love the music. It was great, but I would get a little bit kind of done with hearing the music over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And just
So-
kind of the plot and the kind of the with me giving it a 7.5 out of 10, or like the story a 7.5 out of 10, I could only watch that so many times.
Yeah, for me, like watching it the first time, I feel like I got everything that I needed to from my first viewing. I have it at a 2 out of 5.
Substantially disagree with Aaron.
Where are you at?
I disagree
5 out of
strongly.
5?
Who can tell me what movie that's from?
What?
I disagree strongly.
I don't know. Probably some white male said it.
Yep. Incredibles 2. He's animated white man. I give this movie a 4 out of 5. I think 3 out of 5 is a lot more respectable than 2. But this movie is incredible. It's like you said, it's hilarious. I could go back.
comedy.
I could go back to laugh. I could go back for the more serious themes. What I always say makes up the perfect movie or a masterpiece is hitting all genres. Like the only thing this movie didn't really hit was a romance, but I am not worried about that because it was completely on purpose. They dodged the romance bullet to not make Barbie just heroine to fall in love with somebody.
I feel like they did hit the romance. I don't think romance always has to end with, people getting together. I think it's touching on the topic of romance, but I see where you're coming
I
from
feel like
when you
there,
say it.
I feel like there was never any love between them. Like there was no magnetic relationship dynamic in the movie.
But
He was just always pining for her.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
think-
sometimes how love and
Yeah.
romance actually is.
I think the difference between Aaron and I's score is because you've said that this movie wasn't really your cup of tea the way that it was made, like
Yeah.
the overdoing it and
The cheesiness of it. Yeah.
For the most part, I'm kind of like, I think I'm in the middle of where you are and where you are with enjoying that,
As your score reflects.
as my score reflects.
Yeah. I mean, I just think this movie was really masterfully done. I think if a different director and staff and cast had worked on the same script, that I wouldn't have accepted the campiness as much.
Yeah.
The one thought I had that I was kind of interested because I'm honestly who directed Free Guy? Was that Ryan Reynolds or
I don't
Taika
think he
Waititi?
directed it.
I think Taika Waititi is the villain in it. Did he direct
He
also?
is. I have no idea, but generally when he directs something, he's in it. Like he was in the one.
Sean Levy directed it.
Yeah. I didn't think he
Well,
directed it, but
I had
know
the
what you mean.
thought watching this movie, and I was like, I wonder what this would be like if it was directed by Taika Waititi. because he makes some really good and funny movies, but at the same time, like, what perspectives or like, what aspects of it might have been lost if it wasn't directed by the person it was directed by.
I'm definitely more of a Greta Gerwig fangirl than Taika Waititi.
I'm definitely with you there, especially after the newest Thor movie, but...
Don't even get me started, Kaylee.
Get on that train later.
Okay, so now we have all of our scores and all of our categories, so we can reveal our total score.
I need to recalculate because I changed some
Sounds
things.
good. While you're doing that, Andrew, go ahead, tell us. It's a 10 out of 10, right?
My final score came out to a 9.0, which I am completely happy with. I have no
9.0.
regrets and no want to change my score.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the higher scores that you've given for a movie.
Yeah, I look back I've given out a 9.2 for Across the Spider-Verse. I've given out a 9.4 for The Dark Knight, and I've given out a 9.4 for Django Unchained. So this movie falls amongst my top 5 movies that we've rated on the podcast, not top 5 movies of all time.
Yeah. So is this movie kind of in your, I mean, I know we haven't made an official list or anything, which would be a cool idea for an episode, but like top 50, top
I could
25 movies?
confidently put it in my top 50 at this point, not confidently put it in my top 25.
Yeah. My score is a little bit lower than yours at a 7.2 out of 10. And I, just like you, am happy with my score. I feel like it fits with how I felt. Kaylee, where did it leave you?
I had mine right in the slap dab middle, 8.2.
See, I think 8.2 is reflective much more so of where IMDb should be with the public. I think 7.7 is just where I'm still upset about.
Originally,
See, if
I was at a
everyone doesn't
7.2.
agree with Andrew, it's wrong.
I was at a 7.2 originally, but after changing my scores, came out to an 8.2, and I feel like I can be happy with that score. I think that it's it's kind of reflective of, the Rotten Tomatoes score of like, the average. It's down a little bit, but I think it's like a good average in between.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to Andrew. I think it was Andrew. It was either you or Justin, who's been on the show a few times, and Kaylee and I work with him.
We do look alike.
Yes, definitely. But we were talking about how the number score can maybe be skewed when you think of it in terms of like a grading from school, like an A, B, C, D, or an F.
Yeah.
Like right now, mine's at a 7.2 out of 10. But when you say it's a C movie, like I feel like that
C minus.
doesn't represent what the 7.2 is giving this movie.
If you were to give it a letter grade, what would be the letter grade?
I'd say like a B minus.
What movie would you put it alongside? This is a tough question because there's a lot of movies. Comparable quality for a movie.
I don't know if I can answer that off the top of my
If you
head
think
like
of
that.
one, let us know. But
Yeah.
we still haven't heard Kaylee's score, right?
What?
No, we
we
just did an 8.2
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
out of 10. Yeah.
If I were to give it a letter score,
He
it'd
just
be a
didn't hear
B
it because
plus.
it wasn't a 9 or
Oh,
higher.
that's right. That's right.
Just so, Kaylee, what was your score? Kaylee, what was your score?
Trying to find something to give you time to think of a comparable movie.
If so, letter grade for me would be a B plus. What would a letter grade for Barbie be for you?
I'd say exactly where I put it, A minus.
A minus. Okay, that's fair. I think it's kind of I think that's a good overall, score. Like, I feel like there are parts that deserve an A, parts that deserve a B minus,
Sure.
parts that deserve a B plus. I think it's.
I also
really
feel like heading into this movie, you have it rated right where I thought you were going to. And I'm sure you could probably say the same for me.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though, is you also know that like my expectations don't as much affect my rating because we just came out of Mission Impossible where I had super high expectations.
Mission Impossible?
And yeah, the last week. We came out of Mission Impossible where I had super high expectations and it was on my box office team and I only gave that a 7.0. So I try to be like true to how I feel after watching the movie regardless of how I felt before.
No, I think you're pretty decent at like separating. I think you do have a little bit of recency bias, but don't we all?
I do.
Yeah.
The budget for this movie was $100,000. Andrew, you
It was what?
100 million.
Oh,
I always do that.
He always does
Excuse
that.
I like always see the only one comma every time. 100 million. And like you already mentioned, this was on your box office team. So the revenue for this movie for you is important to have you catch up to my movies. How are you feeling that this movie is going to do in the box office? Because right now we don't have any scores. because we are Friday opening weekend. So this will come out in a week. So by then we'll have some numbers, but right now we don't.
A lot of the talk I've heard has been very positive. We've seen a lot of people showing up today and a lot of people showing up in style, dressed up, which I think shows a lot of enthusiasm. So I'm still expecting 700 million, hopefully, is the bar that I'm setting for it. I'm hoping for more, but I think this movie is gonna perform really well, especially after how good of an opinion I feel like I have of it. I feel like other people may feel similar.
Yeah, I'm not only for the sake of the box office draft, but I think the movie will be a little bit more towards like the 400 million. I don't know if it'll have the sustainability week after week to bring in enough to get to that number. Could be wrong. It's kind of hard to predict, but there's a lot of movies that are coming out right around this time, and I think I think we'll have a good idea after the first weekend.
I'm expecting Barbie to come out on top of the movies that are coming out in this time period. Maybe Mission Impossible and Barbie are going to contend, but
I feel like Barbie has good rewatchability. I think it'll be a movie that people want to take their kids to potentially,
Yeah.
or that like people kind of like middle age, like my age, but
Yeah.
to mid high school ages
But
are going to want to go see it again.
But I hate to say it, I feel like a lot of guys aren't going to want to go see this. And that could hinder it in comparison to like Mission Impossible.
They'll also consider like the Minion phenomenon, where like, you know, it
It's
was
a
a Minion
cultural
movie,
event.
but it's
Yeah.
a cultural event.
Right.
So it's kind of like, it's the thing of like, guys are seeing an opportunity. Okay, we're gonna dress up for this. We're gonna go and we're gonna see what it's about.
a random guy we saw at Chipotle today told us he was going to see it. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think with your guys' estimations, I think somewhere in between is gonna hit the ballpark.
that's where Kaylee's predictions always land. Her scores and her predictions.
Somewhere between 400 mil and 600 mil, and it's gonna be there.
All right, are you ready to go on to the who's in front of him behind the camera?
Wow, we still haven't done that.
Yeah, I'll knock it out quick.
Yeah, let's go.
So behind the camera is normally what we like to start with. So we're going to talk about our director, who we've already sung her praises, Greta Gerwig, the legend. She also wrote the movie along with Noah Baumbach, I believe is the correct pronunciation. The music's by Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt, with original songs written for the movie as well. We've already touched on those artists. Cinematography, I've already said, was by Rodrigo Prieto. He has worked with Greta before, but he's notable for working on Brokeback Mountain, Wolf of Wall Street, Argo, Killers of the Flower Moon to come out in just a few months, which this is an insane repertoire of movies. I mean, just the first three alone, like that you see on his IMDb page. I mean, Argo's an Oscar winner. It's incredible. Editing's by Nick Hoy, who's also worked on all of Greta Gerwig's films. The cast includes Margot Robbie, Issa Rae, Kate McKinnon, Alexandra Shipp, Emma Mackey, Hari Nef, all as Barbie. And more.
More.
America Ferrera as Gloria, Ariana Greenblatt as Sasha, which is Gloria's daughter, Rhea Perlman as Ruth Handler, Helen Mirren as the narrator. Chef's kiss, beautiful narration. Ryan Gosling, Simu Liu, Kingsley Ben-Adir, John Cena, all as Ken, and more. Michael Cera, brilliantly portraying Alan, and then Will Ferrell as the Mattel CEO, and then a whole bunch of other cast members as well, who I think all in unison made this movie fantastic. I would like to ask you guys, before we move on to source code, who was your favorite in this movie? Who wins your favorite actor / character?
Margot Robbie,
Margot Robbie.
easy for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And after her, I would say the person I was most excited to see on the screen, which I already said, was Simu Liu.
I guess we'll all just discuss our runners up because we all unanimously agree on Barbie. My runner up was Will Ferrell as the Mattel CEO.
Oh, that's great. Honestly, I think no one like really. I mean, I was just kind of captivated by Barbie the whole time. There wasn't. I just kind of.
Fair. We were both drawn to two guys.
I really appreciated everybody else's,
Sure.
parts in the films. Honestly, gosh, who played her? The crazy Barbie. Weird
Oh,
Barbie.
Kate McKinnon.
Kate McKinnon.
She's so
I loved
funny.
Her.
Yeah.
She stood out to me. I really liked her performance as Weird Barbie for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That was just really enjoyable.
She's
Special
hilarious.
shout out to a very specific moment in the movie with Helen Mirren. Obviously, it was a line that was put in there by somebody when Margot's like, I don't look pretty. And then Helen Mirren comes in and she goes, obviously, because the movie cast Margot Robbie, this is not true.
Yeah. That was fun.
That was a mistake. that was a plot hole.
So that was a great moment that just kind of brought in like, yeah, Margot Robbie's great.
I have a few other things that we can discuss briefly if you guys want to move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
So one thing that I want to talk about is all of what I saw as inspirations for this movie and references. To name a few, this movie I think clearly seems inspired by The Truman Show, The Matrix, Free Guy, the Lego Movie, which is also like, right? It's a movie that's like meta and self-conscious of it being a toy movie, Lego versus Barbie in each case. And then in both movies too, Will Ferrell is the like domineering CEO of the company.
Yeah.
And then I felt a similar vibe to The Good Place, which is like in Barbie Land, I felt like almost like I was in The Good Place in that show. Because it's all very like surrealist and, you know, anything can happen. And Barbie Land is very like heavenly, I guess you could say, which is what The Good Place is. And then the movie references were amazing. Like we talked about The Matrix with the shoes. Like, should we want to choose to stay in this fantasy or go to reality? And then Kate McKinnon's so funny in that moment. She's like, "No, you got to make the good choice." Like, I gave you
giving you a choice so you could have it like you have a sense of control.
Yeah.
You don't actually.
giving the illusion of choice again. Like, has so many layers to like the for situations with women and the patriarchy. And then let's see, I have a list of other references too. They reference The Shining, where she said, "Are you shining with Barbie right now?" Because they're having like that connection. They're sharing emotions. They're sharing the depression. There's Top Gun reference. I leaned over to Aaron when they were doing the volleyball scene. I was like, they're doing Top Gun right now, which is a staple of both Top Gun movies. They've referenced Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is funny because both of this movie and Zack Snyder's Justice League are owned by Warner Brothers Production. You could you could see a Warner Brothers Discovery company
Logo in the back.
You
Yeah.
could see a Warner Brothers Discovery company building in the background of the Mattel CEO skyline in the building, which was really cool. There's a reference to Clueless. Margot Robbie actually said this in in-person interviews that their closet was Barbie closet's inspired by the closet in Clueless, which is the most iconic closet in cinema. The Godfather references, The Godfather is obviously iconography for film bros everywhere, and for the movie literally has father in the name is for very, very much symbolic of that in our society, but it's also an amazing movie. I mean, it's pretty undeniable.
You want to hear about it?
Do you want me to explain? Hey, writer and director and cinematographer Kaylee, would you like me to explain The Godfather to you and why it's good?
Watching that movie, I had to read Spark Notes. I was really confused.
Aaron, get your guitar and play that song while making 4 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact.
I'll be right back.
But then there's also
Pop back the guitar. Man.
There's also references to Grease Lightning, so Grease and West Side Story with the fight on the beach and the dancing, musical numbers.
Snapping.
Yeah, the snapping, the gangs approaching each other, and the musical nature are,
They were dressed in back with their hair slicked back.
they're definitely inspired by those movies. I feel like the shots too of Grease Lightning for like when they were showing the male-dominated world, showing all like Sylvester Stallone in his furs and the iconic scenes from movies and all this like things that are traditionally masculine. Those shots I thought were really cool, along with the shots of, I'm cutting back to cinematography now, but the shots of Margot or Barbie accepting, assimilating the real world and just seeing people winking and blowing out birthday candles and smiling and running and having fun. I really enjoyed all that. There's a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail with them riding on the toy horses like they're real horses. And then the Sistine Chapel one with the touching hands of the creator and they created with Ruth Handler in this movie that we already talked about. Anything I missed?
Elf.
Yep.
Yeah,
Elf,
reference to
and
and Free
then
Guy. The
Free
opening
Guy.
shot is very reminiscent of Free Guy.
Yeah.
When he gets out of bed in the opening of that movie.
Also, just how she goes through her whole routine, and then the next time she goes through her routine, it's like interrupted
Yeah.
by like emotion.
Yeah, something that was also to me reminiscent of Free Guy is real people, like the people in Barbie Land, or the Barbies and the Kens in Barbie Land, are actually like they're actively being played with in the real world. Like
That's
they're
interesting.
the
Yeah.
they're the literal, like souls of those dolls, and that was very reminiscent to me of Free Guy.
Yeah,
Because
the exact
all
same
the
thing.
characters in Free Guy are just the video game characters from this one really popular video game.
Yeah.
So
And then you've got instances of like Toy Story, like you already mentioned. We talked about the zip ties earlier, I think off the podcast. You mentioned that the zip ties remind you of Toy Story 2. The
Yep.
packaging reminds you of Toy Story 2. But also like mistreating your toys and throwing Weird Barbie aside is also like a reference to Sid in Toy Story 1. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of cool connections, I feel like, to popular media and the real world throughout this movie. And I love those connections because it just makes me enveloped more because my world is in the movie.
yeah, I think one of my favorite things you mentioned, I saw Aaron kind of chuckled at it, was bringing back up the Justice League Snyder Cut
Yeah.
reference.
I felt like I was in a dream where I really cared about the Zack Snyder Justice League.
I leaned over to Kaylee and I was like, snap out of it. You're not in reality.
I thought that was so funny. I was like, I'm glad somebody finally said it. I was like that because it was great. It was good. It was also like, and it was really. I think it was really funny because you mentioned this is a Warner Brothers movie that just put this in there.
Yeah.
So
You know what's cool about these warring movies is, the whole thing with Barbenheimer. Traditionally, Christopher Nolan works with Warner Brothers, and he got kind of alienated by them with everything that happened with Tenet. He switched studios. Now he has a huge blockbuster film, Oppenheimer, coming out with Universal on the same day as Barbie's airing with Warner Brothers, and they're warring with each other. So it's funny that he's now like the main competitor for his home studio. They want, like, he may go back. It seems
I think
like.
it's funny
Yeah, it
that
sounds
to
like
get
he's
back.
going back.
you say they're warring with each other, but like to my perspective, they're basically working together.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
It is Barbenheimer. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not war. That's
No.
coming together.
Hey, Alex. Well, they say that they say that if you put a Coke and Pepsi machine next to each other, both machines make more money next to each other than they would apart. Because the decision changes from should I have a soda to should I have a Coke or Pepsi.
Right.
That's like the marketing
Yeah.
principle.
Yeah.
You could argue the same thing's happening for this movie.
Yeah, and it's like my friend really wants to go see Barbie. I want to see Oppenheimer, so we'll just see them together. Same thing.
Yeah.
With like,
Yeah. And it's like turning into an event.
Yeah.
Like you go out
Yeah.
and you go see both in a day or both in a weekend.
I was more excited to see Barbie be partially. One of the main reasons was because I was excited to dress up and wear pink, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I feel like that added to the experience of going to see it. I was more my individual reasons for being excited to see Oppenheimer are to go and see a movie in IMAX, which was a really cool experience in and of itself. But it just was very different. Like Barbie, everyone showing up in pink. It felt like we were all there together, which is
Yeah.
what I talked about in one of our previous episodes. I think it was the box office episode. I talked about how the theater is a cool experience because when you go to watch a movie in theater, there's all these other reasons it's great. But an important thing is you're going with other people who value that movie enough to pay $10 to go see it. They took time out of their day. They drove there. So you all care about this thing together. You're laughing together. Whether it's dark and you are isolated in your seat, it's an experience you're sharing no matter what.
Yeah, my favorite part about going to the movie theaters is that everyone has vowed to pay attention to the movie the whole time. Our phones are away. We're not off. Like, we can't pause the movie and go do something else that's quote unquote more important. Like if a work thing came up or something like that, we're all like dedicating this 2 to 3 hours to watch this movie together.
And we're all experiencing it together. It's another world that we're, kind of like living together. If it's a good movie, that can draw you into it.
For sure.
Like you're experiencing the emotions that you're feeling, regardless of like if you feel it a lot more than another person, you're still feeling it together. I think Barbie especially did that because, every time there was a laugh or like a comedic moment, it was like the whole theater thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It was like everybody was leaning over.
Laughter
their
is
seats laughing.
contagious. Yeah.
Exactly.
Before we leave, though, I do want to touch on the history of Barbie in a segment that we do on and off called Source Code. We get into like the source material behind a subject. So Barbie's full name is Barbie Millicent Roberts, if you didn't already know that. In the movie, she ends up deciding to go by Barbie Handler after her creator. But the story behind Barbie is that she was inspired because Ruth Handler was watching her daughter play with a toy. It was a paper doll that looked like a grown woman, and she was like attributing different like jobs and characteristics to it and seeing herself in the doll. So that's where she came up with the idea to create Barbie, and she named her Barbie Roberts, and then she created Ken, which she named after her son, Kenneth. Kind of a weird undertone when you think about the fact that Barbie and Ken are boyfriend and girlfriend. But, you know, moving on sharply from that. Barbie lives in the fictional Willows, Wisconsin. Wisconsin obviously being real.
No, Wisconsin's fake. We all know.
I've never been there. You know, I've never been there.
I have family that say they're from there, but I'm pretty sure they're just from like Michigan.
It's like a common conspiracy theory, I think. Barbie's official birthday is March 9th, 1959, which recognizes when she appeared at the New York Toy Fair for the first time that she was unveiled as a toy. Barbie's first appearance in her iconic black and white striped swimsuit, which we see shown in the movie, which is in another reference I didn't even mention earlier. The reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, the whole opening of a movie.
I meant to mention that, and then I went.
I was talking for too long. You didn't get to call me out on it. But also, that movie's that's a dual Easter egg, because you've got 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of the most iconic movies of all time, being referenced, and then Barbie's first striped swimsuit outfit, the first thing she ever wore as a toy. Barbie was drawn by Ken in 1961. The first Barbie doll was sold for only $3, and the first commercial ad aired during a Mickey Mouse Club in 1959. Barbie's doll's signature color is Barbie pink, and Barbie stands at 11.5 inches tall. My final Barbie fact is that the best-selling Barbie doll ever was the 1992 Totally Hair Barbie, which featured hair that went down to her feet.
They showed her in the beginning of the movie when they were showing all the dolls. She was on the front left of the screen. And I noticed, because I was like, that's really long blonde hair. I was like, whoom.
That's funny.
Yeah, there's all kinds of other facts, but just to touch on a few interesting ones, because I see some more here. Barbie had over 250 careers. She went into space in 1965, which is a couple years before man actually landed on the moon. And I think that this is a really iconic toy that has spanned the test of time.
So, like, one last thing on the topic of, like, Barbie facts. Something I saw about this movie was that there was, like, in creating the set, designing the sets and everything, there was a global pink paint shortage for the Roscoe company, which is like a huge, paint.
They used all of the pink paint.
They used all of the pink paint to create this movie.
That's hilarious.
And like looking at the set, literally everything was
pink. Yeah.
There was no other color anywhere. The beach was pink. It was like,
that's so funny.
Wow. Yeah, that's
all of the resources.
And Roscoe's the leading global manufacturer of creative solutions, including LED fixtures, backdrop, color filters. So they're a huge company.
It's just like, I read that and I was like, I wasn't sure. So then I Googled it and I was like, oh my gosh.
That's hilarious.
Lord.
They went crazy with that $100 million budget.
No, honestly, I'm shocked that they did what they did on $100 million. With the cast, right? Plus all the props and sets, like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
They built Barbie World. It was insane.
Yeah, it looked like a real set. Like they had all of those components actually there.
Exactly.
And that's not always cheap. I mean, I know it's all toys.
I wonder if they use like actual plastic. Maybe that's why it wasn't so expensive.
I mean, it's got to be strong enough to support. So
exactly. Oh, that's
probably like how you'd build a playground. I feel like a lot of playgrounds are like have a lot of plastic components and stuff.
Yeah.
That's probably, I would assume, how they approached it.
No
We're just gonna build some playgrounds in this little cul-de-sac. Yeah,
but we have one.
It's fact.
They probably hoped that they didn't have walls anywhere. So
right.
Save them all the trouble. I'm so glad they did that. It makes everything so much more accessible and visible for us as viewers. But moving on to our final segment, which we call Backseat Directing, where we'll normally talk about pros and cons of the movie, something we like to change and something we like to keep the same. Do you have anything in mind, Aaron, with all your vast critiques of the movie?
So for me personally, like we've already talked about, I don't overly like the cheesiness of movies sometimes.
So we changed the whole script.
But if you would let me talk and not interrupt me when I'm speaking.
That's fair.
Shots fired. Oh my gosh.
I was going to say that I wouldn't change that about this movie because it's done really well. Mm-hmm. And even though I don't like it as much as you, I respect it for why they chose to go that route.
I don't like you, but damn it if I don't respect you, Barbie.
That's right. That's right. So I don't know if I don't know off the top of my head, like what I would necessarily change.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I don't readily have anything to change either. I've spoken very, vastly on the things that I think should stay the same. I like the writing a lot. The
Yeah.
acting's incredible. I think you know what I would change? Because I did have that one critique that this movie does have a lot of overacting on purpose. I feel like I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more of Ryan Gosling's talent. But I also feel like at the same time, that's a weird thing to ask for in this movie that's so focused on womanhood.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like not something that we should add to the movie.
Yeah, that's why
I just love
directed.
I just love Ryan Gosling.
Same. As you were talking, I thought of something that like maybe I would change, and that is going back to Kaylee's point in the beginning where she was talking about like the character development was really fast at certain points. So maybe finding a way to smooth that out a little bit, because I noticed the same thing when I was watching it, is that some of this is jarring, and the thing that really stuck out is the kid from the real world, the daughter of the mother who's connected.
Yes.
Her whole personality changed like as soon as she got to Barbie Land.
Exactly.
I do think it was a little much to have her fully dressed in pink, although I loved her outfit. I was like, she looks awesome when she's sitting up on that beam with Kate McKinnon.
I like her outfit,
I
but I would
wish-
have liked her to be like pink.
But it was
like, why
exactly. I
am I? Why
wish she
this is
commented on more.
over the top.
Yeah, it was
Like,
clearly set in her character. Like she showed up wearing all black. That's a pretty strong statement. Like 100%
Yeah,
black.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
She started out as like she was a bully. That's what she was, and then she gets Barbie Land, and she's like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
gotta say Barbie."
Yeah, she
Oh, I love you."
immediately switched.
Yeah, that was something I noticed as well, for sure.
Yeah.
A more connection to that switch, I think, would have been an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kaylee, how about you? Do you have anything that you would change?
Yeah, you stole my topic.
Sorry.
At least he credited you.
yeah.
Hey, you know what? Men saying what women were gonna say first, and then
It's the way it should be done.
that's the it's hey.
Okay, Ken.
That was a joke.
Okay, Ken.
Now we're being meta. He did it on purpose.
I
Therefore, it's okay.
I just bring back what I said before, what you just mentioned. I don't know how it would be written differently. I'd really have to think on it. Like some movies I can look at it and I can immediately point out how I could have written it better. Like Eternals
Yeah.
and Marvel, I could have taken it all apart and re-put it together. And, I knew at the moment I watched it, but like watching Barbie, I was able to point it out, but there wasn't a ready solution in my
Right.
head for it. So I think I'm not sure if it could be written, better aside from the daughter going to Barbie Land. That could have been done better. I think we
Yeah.
all just looked at that and we said, yeah, we know how we could have fixed that.
Yeah.
I also
But-
didn't feel that much of a mom and daughter relationship between those two. I almost went at a certain point in the movie before she like fully verbally acknowledged her being her daughter. I thought she was going to say she's like an older sister who had
Yeah.
custody of her or something
Yeah.
like that.
I just think a lot of the changes that I would make are very difficult ones to try and make in a movie of this size if they wanted to keep it around the time length that they had it.
Yeah. That's always the difficulty, is like, how do you change something without just adding to it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So in probably 7 to 10 days or so, you'll have a new script for Barbie for us to read.
This is how it should have been.
I'll find the script, take out the pages I don't like. Like,
It's a school assignment. It's
I have too many of those right now.
Well, we kind of missed the moment at our halfway point, but I definitely want to make sure we remember to thank our audience, especially people who listen this far in this long of an episode, because we went a little bit over our usual time.
Also, I want to say we're going to be talking about spoilers in this episode. Warning, spoilers ahead. We forgot to say that at the beginning.
It's meta. Don't worry. It'll come back full circle. It's on purpose. It's on purpose. It's on purpose. I promise.
It's how we wrote it. All right.
Everything was written. Kaylee wrote it. So, but definitely thank you to everyone. Please feel free to, share this with your friends and family. We want as big a film community as we can possibly get, so we can all share these conversations in the comments and one day in a Discord. I appreciate anybody who listens to the show. Feel free to like, comment, rate, subscribe. Check us out on social medias where we post different videos every day. We're on pretty much every platform, even Threads now. And we post new episodes every Monday and Thursday. And definitely thank you, Kaylee, so much for coming on and joining us.
Yeah,
and
it was a pleasure to have you.
Your female perspective and lending us your expertise in the industry and all that.
Definitely. It was a good episode. We talked for a long time. This is one of our longer episodes.
You're welcome.
It's fun. I like the longer episodes.
I have a problem.
Yeah.
The talking problem.
If we couldn't talk on a podcast, then we'd be doing it wrong, But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Again, our full episodes are on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere else, or Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks so much, and that's a wrap.
I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world.